This year, I will work with Congress and our military to finally repeal the law that denies gay Americans the right to serve the country they love because of who they are. It's the right thing to do.
That was not the first time, just the most recent time that President Obama clearly enunciated his opposition to the military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. It's the policy that kicks qualified gay servicemen and women out of the military simply for being gay. Interestingly, new Department of Defense figures say that the number of people kicked out of the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and Marines during President Obama's first year in office actually declined by about 30% from the year before. In 2008, 619 people were kicked out. In 2009, the number was down to 428. Tomorrow, for the first time since 1993, Don't Ask, Don't Tell will be debated at a congressional hearing. The Senate Armed Services Committee will hear testimony from Defense Secretary Bob Gates and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen. They are expected to lay out the Pentagon's coming effort to end the ban. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York. Senator, thanks very much for coming in. It's nice to see you here.
My pleasure.
Nice to have you here. Can you give us any sort of preview about what you're expecting at the hearing tomorrow?
Well, I think Admiral Mullen and Secretary Gates will lay out some of the strategy for repeal policy. I think we will get testimony that this policy does undermine the military readiness of our armed services. So I'm looking forward to it.
In terms of the Pentagon's options for implementing this, a number of proposals have been made by people who advocate getting rid of the policy, including an immediate moratorium. That's something that you tried to introduce legislation calling for a moratorium, implementing the policy until the full repeal could be arranged. Why do you think the White House hasn't pursued that?
Well, I think it's been focused on a lot of things, but I do think now is the time to act. And I think Congress can take its own action and repeal the policy. And during that time, the president can also issue a stop loss or do a moratorium. So there's a number of measures we can take immediately to stop the enforcement of this very, very corrosive policy. It completely undermines the military readiness and strength of our armed services. And it's something that degrades and undermines the trust and integrity of our entire armed services.
As a senator who's taken a keen issue in this subject, though, do you have a preference on whether this is done slowly or quickly, I guess?
I'd like it to be done quickly.
Yeah.
We have two wars. We have terrorism threats everywhere in our United States, and we have to make sure that we have all the best and the brightest that are able to serving. As you said, in this past year alone, we've lost over 600 personnel. We need to keep all the best and brightest, and as you've covered in the past, we've lost 10% of our foreign language speakers in Arabic and Farsi, languages that we really need in fighting terrorism. We've also lost over 800 personnel in mission-critical areas, meaning they cannot be easily replaced. So now is the time to repeal this policy because we have urgent security concerns that we need all the best and the brightest serving.
This is going to be one of those issues in which the issues of the issue of the relationship between the military and the political world it has to be addressed overtly. I'm trying to be sort of sensitive about this, but essentially what I mean is that there will be questions as to whether or not the military knows what's best or politicians know what's best in terms of how to proceed here. When you hear from Admiral Mullen, when you hear from Secretary Gates tomorrow, is there a line for you? Is there a bright line where you think that what they're saying won't be fast enough, won't be enough, on which you will push them to go faster than they may want to go?
Well, I hope that they lay out their plans about how they will repeal this policy and how they will implement a repeal.
Okay.
Congress can act individually to do the repeal. And in other countries, if you look at the UK, for example, Britain repealed a similar policy in 1999, and it took only less than a year, the following year, to implement their repeal of their policy and saw no suffering of military readiness or morale in their armed services. So it can be done, and it doesn't have to take a long time. I trust the military to make a decision about what the best way to implement is, but Congress can take action now and provide the leadership that's necessary to repeal this policy immediately.
In terms of building support for repeal and highlighting the harms of this policy as you see them, I know that you've been trying to highlight the stories of people who've been kicked out of the military. You've got a website linked to your website are the stories of some of the people who've been kicked out. Why did you do that, and how does that work?
Well, it's at my website. It's daddstoryproject.com.
Okay.
And we have about 12 stories highlighted of individuals about what happened to them and how this policy affected them. And for me, it all started when Lieutenant Dan Dan Choi came to me and told me about his personal story. And this is a man who has accomplished so much in our military, one of our greatest heroes. And he talked about how he was being asked to lie every day about who he fundamentally is, who he loves, who he spends his free time with, and the corrosive effect that has on the basic command structure. And so his story is so moving and powerful and inspiring to me personally. I thought that the more stories we could bring to bear into the public discourse, it will move this debate forward to a place where we will earn the 60 votes we need to repeal it.
Well, after Dan Choi came out on the show, I can't tell you the number of people that we heard from, both in the military and people who were moved by his story and wanted to do something about it. So at least in his case, I can tell you from personal experience, it moves people. Absolutely. Yeah. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, it's really nice to have you here in person, and good luck tomorrow. I'll see you at the hearing, huh?
See you at the hearing.
Great. Nice
Take
to see
care.
you. Thanks.